Hello, it's Rich Rosen, founder and CEO of Fastcall, and I want to talk for a few minutes about our current releases. So I am looking at fastcall.com under our release notes, and I'm going to talk about our releases going back to version 6.0. We do release, you can see, that covers August, September, October. Um, we do release generally once a month, sometimes more than once a month, an update to the application, and different updates will have bug fixes and improvements. And in the most recent update, support for maybe Salesforce. Sometimes it's maybe even be a support for Twilio, or even a support for a newer version of Chrome or Firefox. Um, but I try to sort of talk about the notes in increments of 6.5 to include everything until 6.6, just for ease of the release notes. Though our packages are released in increments, as you can see, even increments. So starting with 6.50 up until the current, you'll see that our release notes are here, and I'm actually going to share some screenshots. Let's see. Um, Here we go. So um, one of the updates that we've added, which we've had planned for a long time, is the ability to prompt a user who is offline to go back online after a call. And this is really designed to help improve missed calls. So if a user is offline, prompting to go back online will allow the user to receive an inbound call. We added this setting in 6.50, recognized that it was annoying, and then added a subsequent setting to turn it off. But it still is helpful in the case where users need to be reminded to go back online. This is another addition, and I'm doing this as a screenshot because it's easier to show an inbound call as a screenshot. It's one of those things where we just did something kind of basic that we didn't support that we're now supporting. Um, so when an inbound call is ringing, we had always shown when we could find it, the caller ID the number is coming from, if there was a match in a Salesforce record, um, the city and state, which is coming from Twilio, if we can find it, and the number that was dialed and the name of that phone number. So that's new, which is something we didn't necessarily have. And why this is useful is if you are using multiple provision numbers, or those numbers are associated with IVRs or even campaigns, you'll see that here. So this could in fact say Google or Facebook or website. So that's kind of helpful. This is new. We try to support as much of Salesforce as we can. And here's an example where we're starting to support campaign status for dial by list. So if you're using a campaign in dial by list, you can now update the status of that campaign um, here under dial by list. This is an addition that we've made several updates to in the IVR settings, our hold option. So the setting that we've had really for a very long time was round robin. We're calling this round robin queue because it is actually using a function from Twilio that is named queue, and it is more of a traditional inbound distribution in that it's putting a call on hold. The basic round robin just goes in a circle and was initially really designed for probably more of a small office environment where the call comes in, we'd ring the available users in a circle round robin, and if the user is not available, it would go right to voicemail. The difference here is the call actually will stay on hold. So if a user becomes available while that call's on hold, we will connect the call. So there is, settings are kind of similar. The repeat times, how many times we go in a circle, how long we ring each user. The settings that are new is awaiting audio. So this is an audio prompt um, that would say something like, please hold, the next agent will be with you. We do have the option to read the number in the queue. So that would say you are caller number 2, you are caller number 1, and the waiting menu IVR is the option to basically get out of hold. This is actually the piece that's most recent. Um, is the waiting menu. This is the part that's sort of part of the release notes is while that caller is on hold, they can press 0 or any IVR menu option, but they could press um, a key to get out of that hold into another IVR. Call recording is a big part of Fastcall, and many of these settings are not new. This is actually the part that's new. Um, we've made some improvements around how call recordings are deleted. Um, we've actually added a prompt now, so when you go to delete call recordings, it's going to ask you for an additional prompt in the most recent version of the package for new installations. And this actually might also be true for all installations. You're actually going to have to email us to have the call recording deletion turned on. There was a subscriber that deleted all their call recordings when they didn't intend to, so we've sort of put up some impediments here. Deleted call recordings cannot be retrieved. So we've updated how we're sort of handling deletion here, and one of those is also the ability to delete voicemails versus call recordings. These settings are not necessarily new, but I put them on the page. We do allow calls recorded only for outbound calls, only for inbound calls. Dual channel recording is helpful for calls where you want to record the left and right side of the channel separately, so the near and far side separately. So if you were editing um, a recording in any software, that's helpful. Um, these settings are not um, new down here, but the ability to show whether a call is being recorded in the widget, allow users to turn off call recording. These things are recent, but not in the most recent updates. Um, the ability to stop and start recording, pause recording, and some settings around call recording here. This is a new option for transferred calls. When a call is transferred on a three-way call, um, all three parties are on the call together, and we call that a warm transfer because you're all speaking together. This option here, which is sort of shown up there as I think that icon's supposed to be a pause button, will put the inbound call, or could have been an outbound call, but we'll put the second party on hold while the user dials the third party, which could be a fast call user, a Salesforce user group, or a phone number. Um, when transferring to any of these third parties, the user and the third party will talk while the user is on hold versus letting the user listen. So that's a new option. And you'll see that here on the widget. I don't think there's any other admin settings for that. This is really new and exciting. There's actually two improvements here. And this was also something that we added into subsequent releases. There's a new option in the dashboard that will allow you to create a Visualforce page that can essentially project the dashboard up on a monitor or in on the wall or on a stand. And so it can allow you to see your calls up on a monitor. And a subsequent improvement, I think there might be another slide for that, is the ability to see calls on hold in real time. So the dashboard has always allowed you to see past calls and filter by groups or users, by status, but now you're able to specifically put a dashboard up on a monitor that will show you missed calls and or calls ringing in real time, and you pick that option here, and that's pretty cool. Some improvements for SIP phones. SIP is part of the application that isn't really as widely used as I'd like, because SIP is great and has definitely advantages over a soft phone, specifically for inbound calls, because a SIP phone is cost effective. They're not expensive in many cases. The headset I'm wearing now costs about the same as a SIP phone. Many headsets cost much more than SIP phones. A basic SIP phone, but a SIP phone can ring. So when an inbound call is arriving, um, a SIP phone can ring. So the user doesn't have to be in Salesforce or in their laptop. Honestly, they could be away from their desk because they can hear the SIP phone ring. And that's just not something that you can do with a soft phone. It's not something you do with any soft phone. So we have some additional support for SIP, and SIP is really easy to set up, particularly with these new settings. Twilio has recently, a year, maybe even two, but for a while, Twilio did not support a SIP service, but they do now. So we set this up in Twilio, so when the call arrives, it goes to the SIP. So it really gives you a pretty fully functional SIP experience with just Fastcall and Twilio and Salesforce without any other SIP service. So that's actually pretty cool. Um, this is not necessarily new. The slide was here already, but we always like to talk about this because it is super helpful. The ability to block an inbound calls. This is the option that was added to the widget. That also that doesn't require any additional admin settings, but there is a page that will list all of your block calls. You can manage them there. Okay, so those were updates that were in mostly 5.0. Some of them probably rolled over to 5.2. Sorry. Um, so if we come down to sort of the next set of release notes, um, actually it's 5.62. Though 5.62 I think was mostly some bugs. Uh, so 5.60 was mostly a bug release. So we had a bug around missed call emails, and we've improved the time-based routing. And I did mention earlier that the inbound caller ID, we improved that, but were sort of getting some errors around unknown phone numbers like Skype, which we worked on. 5.64 is but we just updated the app exchange to 5.656, which I'll get to in a second. But 5.4 was a big release. Um, we added, I did talk about already the option for hold music. We've also improved the call logging for after hours calls, which is helpful. After hours calls will show that they were specifically after hours when set up with the time of day routing in the IVR. I talked about the dashboard SIP, so actually I talked about a lot of this already. Um, Support for Twilio Client. So Twilio Client is the soft phone, and there's a codec there, which is your compression and decompression. That's what a codec stands for. Affects call quality. Opus is the sort of most recent codec for soft phone calls. Twilio will be defaulting to Opus, sorry, in at some point, but not yet. There's some documentation from Twilio on this, but we've now are supporting the ability to set the um, codec in Twilio client, which was something we weren't doing before. So that can help for soft phone calls. So I think from what I've read about Opus, it's worth setting because it does sound like it's the most preferred codec. And yeah, so and the dashboard. So we talked about that. Um, Oh, this image is not loading. I have to fix that. Yes, we talked about some of these. And then the most recent is 5.6, which we updated in the app exchange last night, which was a specific release updated to support Salesforce Winter 20, which has rolled out as of this date to some orgs, but not most. It actually was scheduled for today. I did notice that Fastcall's org was not updated. Um, I can check to see um, if that's changed. I don't know that they would. So our own org, which is in, I don't remember which instance, but we're in North America, is I don't know where we are now. At one point we were NA17. I think that's changed, but we're still on. I guess that was summer 19, right? So and I didn't look under the specific maintenance window to see if that's been pushed. But our update 6.56, which is now in the App Exchange, will support Winter 20. And this is a little bit of a complicated upgrade because you don't want to push this while you're on Summer 19, because the update was specifically designed to support Winter 20. So it really wants to happen after Winter 20. And we want to sort of time that right, which is kind of the point of emails that we sent out and this video. So hopefully that was helpful. Shoot me an email back if you have any questions. I did one last bit. I did actually, and I haven't done this before, but I did add next version, which is what we're working on, which I think we're shooting for the end of October, which will be 5.8. Um, we are, and I didn't mention this when we were talking, but we are working on a pretty significant update to the UI and Lightning of the application. Salesforce allows us to actually have a much larger UI in Lightning, and we really haven't taken advantage of that. So the UI in Lightning will be pretty significantly different. We're working on logging menu selections within the IVR, which we're not doing today. So if users are pressing 1, pressing 2 in a IVR, we're going to be logging that. We're working on call goals and call lists. We added some improvement around missed calls and reply calls, which also will tie back into call goals and call lists. We are adding and improving a bunch of reports in the application, including some admin reports. And I mentioned before there was with that switch user status, we've added a setting to turn that off, and then some of the past updates which we've talked about already. Great. So shoot me an email if you have any follow-up questions, and thanks for listening to the video.